Hello everyone, today we are discussing the Victorian election of 2018. Yes, I know I'm a little bit late to all this, but I'm glad that I'm finally getting to it. So, what you can see here was the results of the upper house. Yes, we are talking about the Legislative Council, the Legislative Assembly, that's a bit boring, so we're not gonna be the subject of this video. But the Legislative Council, this is the result. And when people heard about this, they were finding it hilarious, ridiculous, and a bit of chaos, to be honest. When I first saw it, I think I bursted out laughing about all of this. But this video will basically be talking about if we put in electoral reform, which was similar to the Senate reform under Malcolm Turnbull, what would the Victorian election of 2018 look like? And is it for the best or is it for the worst? Let's start with the Northern Metropolitan. So this is a seat where Reason ended up getting a seat, actually from below the line preferences. I think it was originally going to go to the Justice Party. But yeah, Fiona Patten got a couple of preferences by people below the line, people picking their own preferences, and that's how she got the seat. But if this was above the line, pick your own preferences, most likely it would end up with Labour taking that seat, other than that staying pretty much the same. This is actually the only region where Labour got one less seat than they would have under the reforms. So yes, they would get 19. Labour's not going to get any other more seats for here. So we've got East Metropolitan. The difference will be that Greens will get that last seat instead of Transport Matters. Northern Victoria, slightly different. We got the Coalition getting 2 seats and the Shooters, Fishers, Farmers taking that last seat. Southeastern Metropolitan, this last seat that went to the Liberal Democrats, will actually go to the Coalition. Here, Sustainable Australia would go to the Greens. Western Metropolitan, this is actually one that's going to stay exactly the same. Although, I think it would have been quite likely for the Greens to pick up that last seat instead of Darren Hinch. Western Victoria, this one will be, once again, slightly different. We got two Liberal, 2 Labour, and the Greens. And Eastern Victoria will actually stay exactly the same. Shooters, Fishers, Farmers getting that last seat. So, this looks a lot more clean and presentable. We've got the top 5 primary vote parties getting seats. We've got none of these micro parties getting a seat. Although, whilst this does look really nice, it does present quite a few issues. There's quite a lot of issues that I have with this, because yes, the Greens are getting what they should deserve. It's about 10% of seats, and they scored about 9.25% of seats, but for everybody else, it's kind of off what they actually got. So we have the Labour Party, in the actual alignment of seats, got 45% of seats. This will now give them 47.5% of seats, and that's when they only scored 39.22% of the vote in the Upper House Legislative Council. Then you got the Liberal National Party, who originally got 29.42% and got 27.5% of seats, so underrepresented, will now get 35% of seats. So that's an increase by 8% over before. And then we have the minor party vote or micro party vote, that got 22.11% of seats, now is only getting 7.5% of seats. And if you remove Shooters, Fishers, Farmers, and Hinch, you've got 15.34% of people who have no representation whatsoever. Now you can say, and of course, you can say they do have representation in their preferences. So even though they voted for the Liberal Democrats, maybe they gave their preferences to the Shooters, Fishers, Farmers, or the Liberal Party or something, and they got a seat. Or if they're socialists, then maybe they gave it to Labour, or they gave it to well, not Reason because they didn't get a seat, but maybe they gave it to the Greens. Same with any of those parties. So you could say they do have representation through preferences, but the fact is, I don't think this is the best way to have a representative democracy if you're going to use proportional representation. I think it kind of defeats the point a little bit. What we have here is we have within these minor parties, we have about 15.83% of them be right of centre. I'm including Darren Hinch for that. And we got left minor parties around 6%. When it comes to the left minor parties, they would have no representation whatsoever. So those 6%, so Reason, Socialists, Animal Justice, good luck getting any seats, guys. But maybe if they can form coalitions, if they can band together, then maybe they can win a seat. But the fact is, People want to have a lot of choice. People want to have a lot of choice what kind of party they vote for. And they want the choice between reason, animal justice, voluntary euthanasia, and the socialists. They want to have that choice. However, when it comes to preferencing, when you are voting for minor parties, what it will end up being is either exhausting or going to a major party. Now, with exhausting, that's probably the worst case scenario, because basically it's people voting and their votes doing nothing, because it goes to all these minor parties who get defeated earlier into the count, and then their vote just disappears and it does nothing. The other scenario is a major party, but that's only because they might put the major party at the end, even if they, just because their vote actually matters, even if they don't really like the major party. So they're suggesting basically that you vote from 1 to 5 above the line, because currently in Victoria, you can vote 1 to 5 below the line. And this is the thing that annoys me, because in the debate about electoral reform back in 2016, when Malcolm Turnbull basically allowed optional preferential voting above and below the line, the idea of a Victorian model, like what this was based on in 2018 and beforehand, was rarely brought up. Like David Leyonhjelm used to bring it up all the time, but the idea where you can have group voting ticket above the line, and then you have optional preferential voting below the line. And what's good about this is it basically does give voters a choice, because they use the argument a lot of the time, including smart people like Anthony Green, that bringing in reform will let people choose their own, it will let their preferences be under their control. But you're forgetting that they already are under people's control. If people want to choose their own preferences, if they want to do optional preferential voting, all they have to do is vote below the line. It's just that some people don't want to bother having to do that. They just want to vote for the party they like, and they are happy for them to distribute their preferences. So yes, I would have probably been happy in 2016 if they went with the Victorian model, but I can see where it has issues, and it's to do with psychology. Often the reason that people vote above the line for the group voting tickets isn't necessarily because of the fact that they're lazy, but more psychology. People are drawn to the top of the page, and they find that, the most suggestible thing to do. And so people vote just one above the line because they can't be bothered looking, under that. They got too much time. They think politics is stupid. They're disenfranchised. They think their vote's going to mean nothing. So they just vote above the line, put a 1, and then they're done. My idea would be to do a switch around. So you get the top, you get above the line, you switch it with below the line, you put below the line up top, and you have the group voting tickets below the line. So if people do want to vote for 1 and let their party distribute preferences for them, they can do that below the line. But if they want to do optional preferential voting, they'll have to vote for the candidates above the line. You could do something where you have 3 choices, where you might have candidates, group voting tickets, and vote for parties, or any order or something like that, but I think it just overcomplicates things. But the good thing about that system will be, because we will be encouraging people to not only vote optional preferential voting, but we will be encouraging people to vote for candidates rather than party. And that's what I think the electoral system should be about. It should be voting in individuals. It should not necessarily be about parties. Parties are a good way to sort kind of people of similar ideologies. The other thing is, currently, I believe, if you were to run as an independent in the Legislative Council, your box would actually appear below the line. So there's actually no way to vote for an independent candidate using group voting tickets. But the reason for that is because those ungrouped candidates aren't actually with a political party. You can't vote above the line for them, because the person that might be below them on the same column might be a completely different ideology and you have nothing to do with. Basically, if you put candidates above the line, running as an independent won't be such a strain. People will be encouraged to actually vote for the candidates, and they won't all be drawn to just these parties. So, it's becoming kind of ridiculous, where some people, they change their name to make them sound like a political party to get people to vote for them. I don't think independents should be disenfranchised by the current system that we have right now. I would also propose that they increase the number of preferences they'll have to make. So currently, I think it's below the line, it's like 5. I think that's kind of ridiculous, because that's going to lead to massive, exhausting preferences. I think it should be up to even 25, because that means that, if there's 5 candidates per party, that means that you're voting for 5 different parties. And then if people don't want a number, 20, 25, even if it's 10, I don't really mind. Just 5 just seems way too little. They can vote below the line on the group voting tickets as usual. So let's do a little bit more analysis of the original results. So who would actually want these reforms and who wouldn't? So every major party, the Coalition, Labour and Greens, would get some more seats if there was the reform. So the Coalition would have got 14, Labour would have got 19, and the Greens would have gotten 4. Shooters Fisher Farmers also would have received 1 more, Justice would have received 2 less, and all the rest would have got nothing. So looking at it, every major party would benefit from these reforms. If Labour and the Coalition wanted to pass this reform, they easily could, of course. They have 29 seats between them, easily a majority. Why would Labour not want to do it? Well, they can view it as a hit against their major opposition, which is the Coalition. Of course, Labour really like to paint the Coalition as pathetic and downtrodden if they can. So if they have 11 seats versus 14, they have all of this to pass legislation with all of these parties. And sure, there's only just enough to pass anything on the left. That's 19, 20, 21 including Animal Justice, Reason and the Greens. It would be easier with the reform. They will have 23 including the Greens, but it will mean that they'll almost have to rely on the Greens, because they could pass policy with the Shooters, Fishers, Farmers, but they still don't have as much choice as they have here. I mean, some of these parties might be right of centre, but they have kind of left-leaning ideas. Like Justice, kind of centrist. Sustainable Australia, I know it's all about anti-immigration, but I think it's like sustainable environmental policy as well. Transport Matters, which from what I can hear is mostly going to help pass Labour Party platform because they feel like they have a mandate. And then we have the Lib Dems who on social issues can help Labour a little bit sometimes too. So they have a lot of choice here, and they don't really get that much of it. It's like 1 seat, and the 1 seat that's taken off them is the Reason Party, which they have an alliance with anyway. So yeah, I mean, it might not be worth it. I mean, they can cripple the Greens, they can cripple the Coalition, they can easily be the biggest party in the Parliament. I'm not sure if they'd actually want to change things. So, I mean, who would want to change things? We know the Greens would, we know the Coalition would, we know the Shooters, Fishers, Farmers might. The Reason Party might say they want it, but even though they're probably not going to win a seat if they change the reforms. I mean, more though than most people, because actually their voters tend to actually want to direct their own preferences. Maybe they would get a leg up and I don't even realize it. Yeah, so there's only in total 13 seats that would actually be on board with changing this around. So I really don't think it's going to happen, and I'm actually not really too upset, because I don't think group voting tickets are the worst thing. As I said before, these minor parties got 22% of the vote, and would have only got 7.5% under these reforms. So I think they'd be very unrepresented, and if it's going to take a chunk out of the Coalition, then, it's not too big of a deal. And also, you talk about, the Greens having 1 seat when they should have 4. Yes, but we do see 2 other left-wing parties getting representation. We've got the Animal Justice Party, we've got the Reason Party, and that adds up to 3 if you include the Greens. So, there is a bit of a sacrifice. I think the worst thing about this whole thing, about these group voting tickets, is not that the fact that these minor parties necessarily get elected, but often the deals between parties are not down to ideological grounds, which I think is the most upsetting thing about it, because what ends up happening is that people like the Animal Justice Party will trade off with the Liberal Democrats, Sustainable Australia, Transport Matters, or something that they have nothing in common with, just be able to get some preferences back. And, you might think Animal Justice, they put Greens over Lib Dems, or they put Greens over Liberal, or put the Greens over the Hinch Justice Party, but it ends up being that some people that don't have much in common and end up switching preferences with other people, and that ends up getting people elected. For example, the Greens in Southern Metropolitan, they really should have won that seat. They got 0.8 of a quota. They really should have won that seat. I mean, and there's also seats where you can see that with the Liberal Party as well, where they almost get 2 quotas, but some right-wing minor parties would trade preferences with each other. But yes, I'm not totally against electoral reform for Victoria, but I just think that there's probably a middle ground which is better than the alternative, which is the Senate reform model. If you make sure people preference a good number, or you allow group voting tickets, or you put the candidates up top. I think there's lots of different things you can do, and I just think it's the cheapest and kind of the saddest method just to have it 1 to 5 above the line and below the line, because it does mean so many people will be out of representation, and I'm not happy about that. When you have a electoral system which is already benefiting major parties by the fact that they're making quotas so high, like, it's not like this. It's not like New South Wales where you have one big electorate and it's 40 seats, and the quota is around 2% or like 5% if you want to do like half terms or whatever. Likely that you're not going to get any representation because every seat requires a quota of around 17-18%. So when you already have a system which is biased to the major parties like this, I think it's really a rude thing to do to change the electoral system to benefit the major parties. There has to be a sensible middle ground where Liberal Democrats who own 2.5%, or the Animal Justice Party got 2.5%, or Fiona Patton's Reason Party got 1.4%, can still get seats. I mean, I'm not happy with the European model either, where a party has to score 5% to get a seat. So yes, I will go to my grave and defend group voting tickets because I think they have a lot of potential. I just think the way they're used at the moment is kind of not ideal, but I really don't want to go to a strictly optional preferential system. But tell me your thoughts in the comments if you disagree. Why? It is very difficult for me to convince people on my opinion about this, but maybe that's just because of the fact that I kind of like the circus that this election presented for us. Thank you for watching, everyone. Goodbye.